IVM.
There's a quick survey to fill out on ivmpodcast.com/survey. It lets us know a little bit more about who's listening to us. And you know what? We're going to do a few prizes. So, we'll do a random drawing of maybe 10 people and we'll send you all some swag. Remember, that's ivmpodcast.com/survey where you can fill out the survey. Do you often dream about leading a more creative life? Whether you wanted to be a painter, a dancer, a cricketer, or a photographer. Maybe you wanted to play games for a living. Growing up, financial responsibilities often take us away from our true passions. Now imagine if you could explore that creativity while still making sure that your family is financially secure. Find a way for the artist and the realist within us to coexist. Karo pure apne irade, apno se kiye sabhi waade. SBI Life apne liye, apno ke liye. To know more about our insurance plans with wealth creation, log on to www.sbilife.co.in. IRDAI registration number 111.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Simblified, a podcast where, four hosts try to get together and simplify the world around us in language that, importantly, the four of us can understand and hopefully make you, the listener, a little bit smarter in the process. Hey, that was a nearly flawless intro. What do you guys think?
Wow, very nice. Except for the fact that out of the four hosts, only three are around.
Yeah, that's fine. That's okay.
But
we should introduce ourselves this time. I am Chuck.
I am Naren.
And I'm Srikeit, and we are missing Tony, who's our fourth host, but he's here always in spirit.
In spirit, yeah. He's probably having spirits right now.
That is true. That's entirely likely.
Oh, these Mallus, I tell you. Okay, today we have a topic that I have been fascinated with for a long time, which is the relationship between content and form. Wow, I know that sounds very heavy. So let me try to give an example of what I'm talking about first. All of us listen to music, I assume. Naren has been listening to music since, whenever. since
music was invented.
Since a caveman blew on a reed, right? This sounds... And then Naren passed by G minor, right? And Srikeit and I have part of an era that's started off with cassettes and segued into what is Spotify today, or Bandcamp for us evolved people. And it's interesting to see that while our musical tastes might remain the same largely, like Srikeit and I will still probably listen to rock, and Naren still listens to a lot of Hindustani classical, etc. What I find interesting is how music itself has changed because of the medium in which it comes. Let's rewind back a little, right? For many people listening to Simplified, the first music that they may have ever listened to was on a CD or a cassette, right? And the concept of an album was very strong. And there are some, especially in rock music, there are some iconic albums. You think of a song, you immediately think of the album cover and all that. Say Metallica's Master of Puppets, or Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast, or Dream Theater's Images and Words, so on and so forth. And today we live in an era where a lot of songs are on Spotify, and then they just come intermittently. Once in a while a band releases something on YouTube and just puts it out there, etc. And there are many people who lament, albums are dying and stuff like that, right? And while that is definitely true, but we should also keep in mind that the album was, it wasn't like a deep conceptual artistic concept or something that was born. It was basically a quirk of the medium. The fact of the matter is vinyl records had only so much space, so bands had to create that many songs. Along the way, somebody had the smart idea of, hey, what if we tie all of these together with a theme or something of that sort, or get a common producer for all of them, like the Beatles did, so on and so forth. And by quirk of medium, almost, the concept of an album was born. It's just that today, the physical restrictions of a cassette or a record are no longer there. So this music is coming to in almost like a different form. And if you look at music itself, I find right now, when we're living through an age where there's so much internet technology happening and changing on almost a daily basis, or rather a yearly basis, there's so many different trends that are happening. For example, because of Spotify, which is now or rather streaming music, which is the most popular form of media consumption or audio consumption in the world today, artists are incentivized to bring the chorus as early as possible. So that, because on Spotify, an artist gets paid only when 30 seconds of a song is played.
Precisely.
And if you have like a long meandering intro for your popular music, that's never going to happen. People are going to skip because people are impatient. They're just going to go on to the next track. So there's more and more of an incentive. In fact, there are charts to show, and people have done this kind of analysis, that over the last 20 years or so, the chorus of the top 100 Billboard songs has come earlier and earlier in the song, sometimes even starting the song with it.
Magic of data science.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine, I don't think a Bohemian Rhapsody could have ever been released
exactly.
in the streaming age.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are all apps, especially in the space of music, it's just fascinating thought experiments to sometimes
No,
do.
and there's similarly another one which I just was thinking of, like, there is a set of new songs that, so an example is someone like Badshah, who's an Indian music composer. Now, this guy, his thing is that he's pretty much one of the cutting edge as far as India is concerned of what he's doing. So the chronology of him coming out with his new song, so the song was Jugnu, and to coming out with that new song, he already had a partnership with YouTube Shorts, which was launching at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted something that could be a hook step. That was specifically designed so that people could emulate it and put it on YouTube Shorts. So the song was constructed so that it could have a specific music section that could lead itself to be emulated as a hook step on YouTube Shorts, which is 7 seconds long. So that's a song that's been constructed specifically for a new age medium.
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to, I mean, in India, the cultural context is YouTube Shorts, but around the world, that's TikTok. And that's TikTok, and more music is being discovered on TikTok. In fact, Naren, I don't know if you know this, the record executives in, your Warner Brothers and all that in the US, large part of their day is actually spent on TikTok because new musical trends and discoveries are happening on that platform.
Precisely.
And if you think about...
And the TikTok trends are also bringing back old songs. Grace Kelly by Mika is an example of that. That whole trend suddenly brought that song back in a big way, and it suddenly got onto the Billboard Top 100 again.
Fleetwood Mac's Dreams, even though some of these happened completely by accident.
Because
the
of
ocean spray. The ocean spray thing. The ocean spray thing. And also, if you think about it, if you just expand the time horizon a little bit, like from the 80s onwards, pretty much with the advent of MTV, music has pretty much been... I mean, for most of its history, music has been just audio. But you can argue that with the advent of MTV and definitely with the advent of YouTube, that music is now indistinguishable. I mean, that the video is as important a part of the song. And this is taken to an extreme, and this really illustrates the larger point that I wanted to bring to the table. Like, if you take a band like OK Go, for instance, right? OK Go, for those of you who don't know, they're a band that makes decent music, but extraordinary videos. Like, if a new OK Go video releases, people go to watch the video and not so much the song because they do astonishing things with their videos. You can say that that's a band that, you're sure, they're still an artist, they're still a musician, they're still popular in that sense. But for them, it's more about video. In some sense, they compete more with other video rather than other musicians, right? So this, to me, is an example of, you add examples like your Badshah example or other people who do similar things like this on TikTok. In fact, there's this nice article that Shefali Bhatt, I think, had written in Mint a few weeks back, talking about exactly this and how it's affecting Indian composers and all that. You have like Vishal Dadlani and all wondering, Salim Sulaiman, wondering that, now they have to compose Bollywood songs with, I'm just loosely using this term, TikTokability in mind. Obviously, in India, it's with say Instagram Reels or whatever it is. Like, does the song have that little hook or that little moment that can, be used to do silly dances or go viral on it? It's interesting. That is,
you need that 7-second hook of a section in the song for it to go anywhere. Another aspect of how song discovery is happening is song discovery is actually happening through TV shows and being OSTs in TV shows. Right? In a lot of shows, you can't always have your entire song playing like over there in the background. It needs to fit a certain moment. So that for that also you need that, it may not be as short as a 7-second hook step, but you need a section that specifically caters to a mood. Right. And so there are a lot of bands that are also constructing songs that can actually be good OSTs as well, therefore can gain followers who are seeking out those songs from the shows.
Yeah. So just to summarize this little bit on music, and keep in mind, this is just one aspect of media itself. It's like music is very much a reflection of the media of the times in some sense, right? Classical music might have, I say this because we shouldn't over-romanticize any era's music, because it is extremely contextual to that era, and the limitations, or I mean, in some sense, those bugs do end up becoming features. Classical music probably had a lot of instruments, because at that point of time, there was no amplification, and it needed that many level of musicians to fill an entire hall with music. And there was no recorded music or anything at that point of time. Maybe rock and roll evolved because of certain other imperatives. So on and so forth. I find ever since I came across this one band, I forget their name, but this band figured, hey, listen, if Spotify is going to pay us only when we hit 30 seconds, what's the point of composing the 31st second? So all their songs are 30 seconds.
Oh man.
They have an album of Beatles tribute songs, all of which are 30 seconds. They recently released an album that has like 100 or 150 songs, all of which are 30 seconds. And in the long arch of music show, you'll have some music snobs that are like, oh, how can you like music? Like, how you're making a joke. But in some sense, it's a perfect reflection of what the economics and imperatives of this era are. I find this completely fascinating. Like, music at one point of time might have been written to be performed. The Beatles are a great example of this. For this first six albums were meant to be performed to audiences. And then Lennon and McCartney were like, this shit, we are going to let's make the best music we can. Forget about whether it can be performed or let's use our studio to the max.
I think that's the final point of this, that there are influences that the medium does on the music, but there are also greats who are breaking that, saying that, you know what, I'm going to create my music, which will be irrespective of the medium. And another example, along with Lennon McCartney, is, again, something I mentioned, Bohemian Rhapsody. The biggest opposition was that it was too long, and the record label did not want to put the song in the first place because it's too long for radio play.
And it was too complicated to produce on stage.
Yes, exactly. So their whole thing was that this song is not amenable to the medium of the time. And the bands actually said, screw it, we're going to do whatever the hell we want to, and created a masterpiece. So first, their masterpieces are created while adhering to the medium or breaking away from it.
Okay, I have one question here. Okay, noob question, because I don't listen to popular music or Western music much. But most songs tend to be under 5 minutes, right? Or around that mark. And that is probably a relic of the fact that the earliest vinyl records, 78 RPM records, were 4 or 5 minutes. That was the most they could. But even to this day and age, you rarely have popular songs. I'm not talking about, so there are Pink Floyd numbers, and there are, Queen, and, who have broken the thing. But most songs are 4 or 5 minutes long, right?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Is there something deeply inherent in the human sort of attention span, that it's a natural thing, 3 or 4 minutes? I've seen movie songs, everything is 3, 4, 5 minutes.
I don't think so, actually, because if you rewind back, classical music was not 4 or 5 minutes. It was an entire suite.
It was hours,
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that in Mozart's time, they wouldn't have imagined that a song could be something as short as 4 minutes.
It reminds me of Yes Minister. Humphrey takes Jim Hacker to a performance at the opera. And Jim Hacker absolutely hates it. He's never been to an opera at all. So it turns out it is lasting for 90 minutes. And so Jim Hacker, is as long as a football game. So when it doesn't end at 90 minutes, he calls it injury time.
Sorry.
I just wanted to sort of, but
no, it illustrates the point quite nicely, I think.
But that's what I mean. While still most songs across the board are that long, I think the other thing that the medium has also done is that created areas and spaces for, like, for example, prog music, which is famously not 4 or 5 minute songs. Most of them, they can be 12, 15, 20, 25, 30 minute songs as well. And the whole point is that, because that's also a accommodation that the medium has given in some way, where something like prog would be something very niche that only a few people would want to listen, versus now, because of the fact that the medium allows for multiplicity of either having a playlist where I have 5-minute songs or 30-minute songs, which I can kind of put together. The video allows for that, which allows for me to actually like vary my choices. And I think that, and more, I mean, we are only recently entered into the streaming era. Comparatively, like it's only been 4 or 5 years since when streaming has become viable. So I think the more time we spend over here, I think that norm will also start breaking down potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And the point is, we don't know what the future is going to hold. We don't know whether the streaming era is going to be the ultimate the ultimate medium that there is. And I think we started with music, and we will go on and talk about other aspects of media as well. I think the point is this: there is content, and then there is a media, and the content will always be dictated by the media. And there is no point hanging on to rules or notions, because those were built in the past and they were relics of another era. So whenever people say, for example, songs these days are X or Y or something, that's because at that point of time it was built for a different kind of era. If there are no albums being brought out these days, that there is no reason for an album. What is the reason for an album to exist if your favorite musician is giving you one song every couple of months and doesn't necessarily have to compile them into an album together? There is no imperative for him or her to put them together and sell them in a physical format in a store, because the imperatives, the economics are completely different. Similarly, if another artist is making stuff for TikTok first, then sure, because that's how people are discovering and consuming music these days. And who knows how it will happen in the future. Maybe in the future, music will be inseparable from video, for instance. Today, that's kind of already happening to most popular music, where the video is like you take a song like Would I Want to Know by the Arctic Monkeys, for instance. I was about to say Arctic Circles. So that video is so iconic that it is impossible to separate the song from that imagery. Again, these are just some random things I think about.
Even when you take songs that are really like also I always forget the song, Chuck, the one with the guy makes the machine for the music. The machine with
Wintergarten's Marble Machine. Wow,
Marble Machine.
What a reference that was.
So Marble Machine, the whole thing is, the song is quite, I mean, it's catchy, you can listen to it, it's fine. But there's nothing extraordinary about the song itself. But the video is what makes the song truly extraordinary, right?
The video and the fact that he constructed a machine to make that song. Naren will send it to you later. You will find it utterly fascinating. And that's the other thing, right? Sometimes you listen to a song and then you're like, okay, this is a decent song. And then you discover another aspect of this. Oh, it was made through artificial intelligence. Or it was, or this is another song played backwards. Or this is a video of the song that actually matters. Completely. Absolutely. I think we should take a little break about now, because that is an imperative of the podcast format. And we'll come back and just apply this thesis to a few other aspects of media, I suppose, starting with blogging.
See you on the other side.
Love fighting?
We've got you covered.
Check out our show, The Fighting Goat, where we, the voices of the internet, Arjun Chipalkatti and Somesh Kamra, bring to you crazy weekly action on your favorite combat show, The Fighting Goat.
Be it commentary, breakdown, predictions, analysis of styles and techniques.
And of course, your round of favorite fighters.
You can listen to us every Thursday on the IBM Podcast app, website, and all major podcast streaming platforms.
Welcome back to Simplified. We have to take these breaks because it's not a radio show, and that's another thing that's interesting, right? Many people think that podcast is just radio on demand, but it's completely different, right? I'm just wondering, if this was actually a radio show, how so many things would be different. One, we wouldn't be able to do the nonsense that we do. Two, it would be a lot more fast-paced. And three, and this is interesting, is that there is no fixed time as such for a podcast, right? We can make this 20 minutes long, we can make this 1 hour long, we can make it 2 hours long if we want, and that sound that you hear is actually our producer crying. Don't and that's kind of like the same thing with internet video on demand in some way, in the sense that a sitcom has to be exactly 22 minutes long. Each episode has to, each half an hour episode has to
22 minutes, and the rest is for advertising.
And the rest is for advertising, right? So this places an artificial limit, almost like I'm using the word artificial over here, on both the content and the advertising itself. Like advertisements themselves have to be 15 seconds, 30 seconds, or 60 seconds, right? If the advertiser has an idea that it makes it 65 seconds, tough luck. You need to trim off those 5 seconds because there is no ad slot that it fits into neatly. Whereas on YouTube, there is no problem like that. And we are seeing that on Netflix, right? It's fascinating to me sometimes when you see the length of various episodes in a series. One can be 47, one can be 45, one can be 60 even if needed, one can be a double episode. Couldn't have happened back in the day. Again, freedom given because of the format. And another thing that Netflix has brought to the table, for instance, is because of the changing nature in which we consume content, which is more likely to binge a series rather than wait for it episodically. That's changing how writers are writing the series as well. They're now made for bingeability rather than, like, the last possibly weekly big show was Game of Thrones possibly. And you can see how that was built for a huge hook at the end so that people would discuss it for a week and come back the next week, right?
Exactly,
right now it's more about, okay, quickly, get on to the next. I want to quickly see what the next series is. Sort of like how Sidney Sheldon used to write his novels.
Precisely,
you just quickly want to see what the next thing is, line it up, binge it and finish it.
And that's where also, I mean, there's so many nuances of creation of content, video content that have come into play. Is that, specifically, I mean, considering that two of us at least have spent some time in advertising, it has distinctly changed the advertising medium. But what also it's done across content is the aspect of while there was a initial understanding that all content will have to be really short content to work. The point is this, that the attention needs to be grabbed in the first few seconds, and then the content can be as long as it needs to be for that to work. And so now what that's done is that I like the number of the new YouTube channels that I watch they almost like kind of provide a summary up front. Where there is a small hook and summary, and there is also a bait that to kind of watch the video to the end, because there's the narrative will reach its eventual conclusion over there. And once you're hooked to the channel, once you're a regular subscriber, like you said, there is no set length in any which way. There are episodes that can be 10 minutes long, 20 minutes long, 30 minutes long. You're still going to come back and subscribe because you know the hook that you're looking for no longer is the time, but the narrative flow. Right.
The other thing that fascinates me with respect to digital video particularly is the kind of innovations you can have within that, which they wouldn't have been able to teach you in filmmaking school, say 10 or 15 years back. Is that the medium inherently has changed the content. Like, I'll give you a couple of examples. One is the Bandersnatch sort of example where you can choose your own timeline and story. Something that Goosebumps used to do back in the day, if you remember with those books. You can choose your adventure.
Choose your ending,
The second thing, and I don't know if you guys have seen this Seth Meyers special on Netflix, the late night host Seth Meyers.
I haven't seen it yet.
So it's a pretty nice special, and I'm not going to give this is not a spoiler as such, not for the narrative, but it's a spoiler for format, if that's anything. So Seth Meyers, obviously being a late night host, is deeply political in his content, but here he was talking 40 minutes without political content at all, and you could feel the tension in the room. When is he going to drop the T word, right? Trump. And then he just like, okay, I'm sure you guys are all just waiting for me to talk about politics. But maybe there are some people who don't want to see me talk about politics. So tell you what. So for people who are watching this at home and don't want to hear me talk about politics, a button should come over here just about now. And when you're watching it on Netflix, you have a button over there, like the skip intro. You have a skip politics. Wow. You have a skip politics button that comes on the screen. So this is not a video by itself. This is not a standard video. If you download a torrent of this, into an AV, you won't be able to use that. That's a feature that's built into Netflix. That's
brilliant.
So when you press that skip politics, you skip 10 minutes ahead. And at that point of time, he says, welcome back all those people who've skipped politics. Oh, you missed a lot. And then he goes on. Like, now this is a medium innovation, right? It can't happen on, And I'm sure Srikeit and I can rattle off many examples of this from the world of advertising, where a bug of the medium was turned into a feature and used in a very interesting way, like the Swiggy Voice of Hunger example or something like that.
Swiggy Voice of Hunger. There was another one which one of my favorite examples from an advertising world on using the medium a certain way was, advertisers are constantly under pressure because most advertising people have come from the school of learning television advertising and always struggle with this. So, the constant struggle is, how do I make an ad to fit 7 seconds? Right?
For YouTube.
And this is where I think it was Audi or Porsche South Africa, to run an ad for Porsche in that 7 seconds. They basically did this thing where they showed an Porsche accelerating from 0 to 100 in 3.4 seconds. and they left the rest of the ad that's the ad. So they actually did 3.4 seconds worth of ad, and the rest 3.5 seconds was just like, that's how fast the Audi can go. So they were like, we don't even need all 7 seconds. We only need 3.4 seconds.
So what I love about examples like these is that it's made for the medium. And like, that's a lesson like I try to give like students or clients whenever, like create something for the medium. Like even today, like if like a musician today, okay, it's not like you're making music in the 70s anymore. Like, what are the platforms you're going to be on? You need to be seen on TikTok. You need to be seen on YouTube. You need to be seen on Spotify. You need to make content with the imperatives of that medium, with how those mediums are being used today. Like, sure, you learn all your scales and all that. That's the basics. But just doing that may not be enough anymore. You do need to adapt your content to the imperatives of the medium in some way. And this is very true of writing as well. I mean, the three of us have seen writing, quote unquote, our own writing, I guess, evolve or devolve, depending on your point of view, from long form blogs, Naren, here's looking at you, to trying to be clever and snappy on Twitter, to maybe these days taking a screenshot of something and putting text on it on Instagram.
Or just emojis.
Right? And what is incredible about this, and along the way you can add in other quote unquote mediums like SMS and all that, how each of these have a different vocabulary of their own. Like the transition from blogs to tweets. Naren, I think we've blabbered on and on about that enough. I'd like to what's your experience like, because you've aced humor in both mediums.
I don't know much about Facebook and Instagram. I don't use, but Twitter and blogging. So blogging you tend to ramble on. And you tended to use a lot of unnecessary language, at least I did, right? So you want to describe something and you go on and on. And oftentimes, so when I revisit my own blog, I find that mildly irritating. So I'm sure my readers did too. But, that's what blogs are. You just sort of skip and Twitter doesn't do that. So Twitter, you have to be very concise, very snappy, and earlier it was 140 characters, now it's 280. But then Twitter started allowing threads. And threads, so there are really a lot of excellent threads, different kinds of threads which tell stories, threads which give information, threads which build, disseminate entire histories of things. That's become very minimal as well, because you want to fit a lot of stuff into maybe 10, 20 or 30 tweets. So your narration style becomes very minimal. You stop using unnecessary words. You tend to choose your words very carefully. You want your tweets also to have some kind of a cadence, because if you're writing half a thing in one tweet and the other half in the other.
So you almost become staccato in some way, right? You have to kind of have like that. Each tweet by itself should have a meaning, should contain a set of information that's complete, and the entire series also then makes sense. So you're basically composing 140 character paragraphs for each of your this thing. 280 characters.
It's almost like each aspect of Twitter has a different syntax and grammar of its own. This is a hashtag itself. And while a lot of this might seem silly, the fact of the matter is a lot of the communication for business and like geopolitics happens on that platform right now. Arguably, the stuff that the Ukrainian government is putting out on Twitter is far more effective than any formal governmental communication ever in history. And how do you teach something like that in a foreign policy writing class or something like, which has been used to telegrams or something for a long period of time, and now along comes Twitter? Like the imperatives of a hashtag. And I'm just going back to our early days on Twitter, that golden era of 2009, 10, 11, 12, that era. Like,
which was 140 characters, right? So you had even more.
And the grammar of using a hashtag, for instance, that had its own unsaid sort of, you'd put something random and then you put a hashtag right next to it, and people just inherently got it and would, just riff off it.
And there's another aspect that also really comes across to me from there, which was how the quirks of using the medium actually became internal references by themselves. One great example for me is the whole point about, on Wikipedia, we had this, it was there everywhere also when we used to talk there. We used to have this channel called IRC and we used to talk on that. And that's where if you wanted to say something with a lot of emphasis, you'd like put exclamation marks. But then what would happen is, especially like normally when people put exclamation marks, they would drop the shift at some point of time. And so instead of putting the shift, it's suddenly coming as 111111111. Right. So it then became a real thing where instead of, so when someone wanted to say something with emphasis, they literally put exclamation marks, put ones afterwards, and literally type 111, 1111 after that. Because that's all the emphasis. Because I'm putting so many ones that it's become a 1,1111.
Amazing.
Right. So similarly, there are other phrases like pawn instead of own, and hodl in the crypto world instead of hold. Which are all like, because of the stress of the situation, you're actually making those typos, and those typos are then becoming the terms that are owned by the space.
I like looking at, I hate to go back to marketing in some ways, but if you look at how some companies have adapted to the digital age very well in terms of the communications, a great way to illustrate what you're talking about. Like, I look at legacy companies that have been successful in the digital age. It's one thing to look at digital first companies because they understand the internet inherently. So I take inspiration from companies like the New York Times, for instance, which has been legacy for a long time, struggled to adapt to the internet, finally got their shit together, and now is like absolutely thriving. And how they're thriving, if you look at it, and it's a great analysis in how they use media, is seeing how they adapt their content to different mediums in some way. Sure, there is a Vanguard old paper, which will always be what it is, right? Which doesn't necessarily need to change. The website has some things. If you see their Instagram, it's way more lively. It's way more interesting. On YouTube, they have a lot of 360 videos. They're a great example of a company that adapts content according to the medium, with the tone of the medium and all that. Washington Post TikTok, by the way, is hilarious. They have only memes over there. Their bio on TikTok is literally like, we are a newspaper or something like that. And it has one character called Dave who goes on making fun of the news of the day. And it sometimes isn't even tangentially connected to the news. But that kind of tone works on that medium, right? Who would have thought, like, imagine 50 years back, forget 50, just imagine like 10 years back, one of the most respected newspapers in the world is going to sit and make jokes and short videos online. It would have been absolutely ludicrous. But hey, that's how mediums evolve, people's consumption evolves, whatever works. I think it's a matter of, whatever works.
And it's also, I mean, this is where the term like digital natives comes into play. About digital or any platform natives, like understanding what the platform is like, and understanding what the space is like, and how you can kind of evolve inside it. And which is what a lot of companies get. The few legacy companies that have gotten it right, and most of them who get it wrong, are always people who are trying to approach a new medium or a new content platform with legacy thinking. And that's where all the mistakes happen, because you're trying to be because you have been clever in one particular medium, or you achieved success in one particular medium, but your legacy thinking is what's holding you back, because you have to, it's not transferable. You have to really construct it from the ground up. And you need to get people who understand the medium natively to kind of do that thinking.
100% agree with you on that. And companies who do think through that, I mean, you can do this thing for in many unexpected places. It could be like, we've all been to that friend's house who's got like a interesting, say, Wi-Fi SSID or something like that. Becomes a media point by itself. Like another one, which Srikeit, I'm surprised you didn't bring it up, is actually stock tickers.
Oh yeah,
there are some very interesting stock tickers. Like Ferrari's stock ticker on the NYSE is actually RACE, RACE.
There
are a couple of other very interesting ones, like Cheesecake Factory's cake. I didn't even know Cheesecake Factory is listed. Harley Davidson is HOG, which stands for Harley Owners Group, which almost shows their loyalty to building a community. And Franklin Templeton is Ben, by the way, because their symbol is that of Ben Franklin.
Oh, yeah, and I think even famously from the case study, Southwest Airlines is Love.
Oh,
LUV, because they originated from Love Field in somewhere in the southern United States. I don't remember exactly where. And that also is part of their ethos about how they are wanting to be like all of
is
the
Love
company.
Field in Dallas or no?
I think it's in Dallas. Love Field in Dallas, I think. So that's their stock tick, and that becomes part of the company's ethos as well, which is something that they portray over there. So you're very true.
Steinway Pianos is LVB, which stands for Ludwig van Beethoven. That's fascinating. Wow. Avis Budget Group is Car, So these are fascinating. It's almost like you're squatting on some, very interesting. This becomes another place for the company to show what it stands for. That, like, Facebook wanted to rename itself from FB to Meta as a stock ticker itself of late. I'm not sure whether that's happened yet, but yeah, fascinating, I think. And this is across media, right? Like, you look at how news has changed over the last few years. We started with the example of New York Times, but if you look at how people are consuming news these days, especially Gen Z, they are consuming it more on TikTok/Instagram Reels, where you see the success of a Instagram first journalist like a Faye D'Souza, for instance, which is more in line with how millennials, late millennials like us, or Gen Z, like
one of the defining characteristics of millennials or the digital generation is that they have absolutely no loyalty to form, right?
Yeah.
So they're
very adaptable. That's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
And so especially someone of my generation, I still do not get Instagram. I cannot for the life of me understand why anyone would use Instagram. Because you can't forward it, you can't quote tweet or do anything like that. You literally cannot do anything except post stupid pictures of yourself.
And somehow a bug becomes a feature in that.
It's, and people just, oh man, my son, for example, he doesn't look at WhatsApp at all. He just it's just Instagram. If you want to reach him, you have to reach him on Instagram. No way he's going to look at WhatsApp.
Yeah, it's like the point you made, Naren, is a very interesting one. What is it that you said?
Loyalty, loyalty to form. Yeah.
They have no loyalty to form. That's what I really like. Like, it's like tomorrow something else might come up, and this generation is adaptable enough to be, okay, till now we were getting our news through 2-dimensional videos, and now we are getting it through 3-dimensional videos tomorrow in the metaverse. So they will find it a lot easier to adapt than, say, people who've been using. And that sense is, I guess, an allegory for marketing managers as well, who've been stuck with print for so long, and suddenly so much change has happened in such a short period of time that they're just struggling. Like, they've got Facebook sorted, suddenly Instagram comes in. Instagram, they've got it sorted, now suddenly something else has happened.
Also that's why millennials are, truly follow the code, because they might to have loyalty to form when it's temporary.
Yeah, it's almost like you can well said.
Well played.
It's almost like you can extract meta lessons from here, and that's for me at least, that's what I take away from all of this, right? Like, there is some part of music that, at the end of the day, what is music supposed to do? Like, if you get into that, and then where can it be satisfied? It's not necessary that you need to go to a store and buy a CD for it, or you don't even need to stream it from Spotify. Like, there are some, I'm pretty sure that a lot of people, their music listening time is actually when they play games, because it's from the games that they are, So, if music is just supposed to make you feel happy or whatever it is, you can consume it from any number of sources. There are some people,
and that's what actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because there's something that as possibly the only
gamer,
somewhat dedicated gamer in this group, gaming as a form. What was I've just finished a couple of games which were pretty monumental. I myself playing them, and in that particular thing, that what games have traditionally been expected to be. Like, they are games. They are trivial, frivolous pieces of code that you indulge with for a few seconds or a few minutes, or at the very minimum, a couple of, with any regularity. The thing that the form that the way the form of the platform has changed in such a major way, that they are massive narrative tools. They are massive tools of consuming other, like, for example, I recently learned how to play poker because as part of one of the games that I was playing, a mission required you to play poker with another player. And so I learned how to play poker so I could play it in the game, and therefore now I have learned a new art form. I have a lot of music, like I play like these sports games, and sports games are a great place for music discovery. Like, I get like their soundtracks are really rich and always evolving. Just playing 3 different games, I have constantly got my Shazam on, where I'm just constantly getting the tracks. And now what they've started doing is they're releasing soundtracks of the games on Spotify. And so you can actually download the entire soundtracks and listen to them. So the games, the format of what a game is supposed to be and how they are played and how much involvement they have is tremendously changed. Like, right now, games, probably the medium that requires a single game is right now which commands the maximum amount of attention in some way. Because say, for example, you're playing a major game, like I just finished Horizon Zero Dawn, and that requires a minimum of 60 hours of gameplay time. Gameplay time. This is just like time that you spend in game. So for that's more than 2 or 2.5 full days. So you're playing that game over a couple of weeks, and you're constantly, your brain is constantly attuned to it, and you're following the progress of it. So that medium itself has evolved in such a massive way that the way the consumer is consuming the content and the impact that they are having and all the other kinds of content that are consumed through it, it's become a mega medium unto itself.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they say of Amit Verma episodes. Like you listen to the episode on Monday and then read all the articles and watch all the YouTube videos of the rest of it. I want to ask you, Srikeit, one thing, and I'm assuming if not now, it will happen in the future. Are the media consumed within games, like music, for instance, can they be personalized and customized? Suppose I'm a fan of rock music, for instance. Can I have more of that kind of music if I'm playing a game?
So it's not, I haven't encountered a game that can be done that way still, although there are a few games like, give two types of options. There was, I forget which game, but this is quite early on actually. There was one game that allowed you to play your own soundtrack inside the game. So you could import your own music and play it inside the game when you're playing it. And the second thing being that there are also now, they have like EA games especially, have this module called EA tracks inside the game.
Oh, okay.
And you can actually, once you listen to the whole soundtrack, you can go and enable and disable the songs in their soundtrack. So you can play your playlist in that order.
Okay.
Some games also have like, so you know this with the Nike workout app, right? They have a power song, right? So you know the concept of a power song?
No.
Nike plus the fitness app had a thing where, say for example, when you're running or when you're doing any kind of strenuous physical exercise, if at some point you're feeling yourself flagging, you have the option to hit power song, which is your pump up song. So that actually gets you going through that difficult period. Right. So Nike Plus has that option. And I think there are games also that allow you to have an option to fit a song at a point where there is major drama happening, that you can actually play that thing with your with the preferred song within the soundtrack.
Insane. I have a couple of points to add to this, but before that, I just want to, Naren, like you've been hearing the two of us blabber about music and all that for a while now, and why the genre really doesn't matter, because you are a person who I know deeply, deeply loves music and looks at it and keeps a very open mind. And as someone who's probably grown up listening to music in the quote-unquote old way with radio or records or even cassettes, how does how does all this evolution right now, how does it make you feel? Because at one level, the norms of the past are being shattered and people have no loyalty, etc. anymore. But in some way, people are, I would say people are listening to more music now than ever before.
Yeah, so discovery is so much easier, right? So back in the day, for example, you told me that, band X is great and I listen to it and I'm like, what kind of music is that? And it's, it's heavy metal or it's something that normally I wouldn't listen to. But you curate a list for me, okay, and sort of break it to me gentler. So that I'm talking about the discovery aspect of it. Sure. It was virtually impossible back in the day, right? So the reason I went through engineering college and I just didn't like any of the songs I heard, probably because the first few songs I heard were not really great ones. It didn't catch me at all. Later, all the great songs came along, but they left no impression on me because my mind was already closed. So there was a little window where maybe but dozens of my classmates, they all, no one grew up listening to rock music. They all got rock music when they went to engineering college and then they listened. Today, it's a lot more different. You can share and listen, discover different kinds of music. So somebody shared some African music with me recently and I was mind blown. It's very fascinating in its own way. It's some Cameroonian or Senegalese, something like that. Yeah.
So one other aspect that I feel is really interesting over here is for me, and I know it is true for a lot of people, but this is particularly true for me. Music is very strongly associated with memories.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there are certain memories, like there are certain types of music are associated with certain former girlfriends or certain former experiences that I've had. I have a song that I associate very strongly with a breakup or a band that I strongly associate with a breakup and stuff like that. So therefore what this has done is, and again, bringing the game aspect, but also bringing like other life memories aspect. There are certain songs, like one great example, which we'll all know is like Late Goodbye by Carnival of by Poets of the Fall, right? Late Goodbye as a song was a song that I encountered while playing Max Payne 2.
So you remember it for that?
I remember it, and because the game, in fact, it was so awesome that, you know, there is this one part, and this is my all-time favorite part of that particular game. You're actually you're hunting down and you're sneaking around and you're killing all these guys, and that song is there as the song. That's the only song in the soundtrack of the whole movie, of the whole game. And in there is one part where you're actually sneaking by into a room, and there is a couple of those thugs who are sitting, and there's a grand piano over there. And the thug is actually sitting and playing an acoustic version of the song.
Oh, wow.
So I have actually remembered sitting there hidden for almost 3 minutes while that guy plays the song before I jumped out and kick him. Jump out and kill him. Because I'm like, when he's playing the song, I can't kill him back. Like, there's such a beautiful version of the song. You know, so I'm literally waiting for him to finish the song. Amazing. So for me, a lot of these songs have... So when I listen to that song, or I listen to a lot of the songs that I've discovered either in-game or during a show or during like, because of some memory, they evoke a certain memory. So it's not even the quality of the song anymore. It's the memory that is associated.
Absolutely. And I will add to your point by moving away from music to podcasts, actually, because there are some podcast episodes that I associate with certain moments or memories or something like that. Like, for example, like there was a particular Bugle episode where John Oliver made such a funny joke that I was cycling at the time and I was going at a pretty high speed that I swear I almost fell off my bike. So I still remember. So now when I think of this is a flyover in JVLR just to go to Vikhroli. So whenever I think of that flyover, I think of that Bugle episode. Similarly, there are certain Amit Verma episodes I remember and I know exactly what I was doing at that point. So it goes back to what you were saying. There are some flights that I was taking. I was listening to a particular episode. So the point on memories and not just music, but media in general, I guess. You remember where you were when you were reading a certain book, for instance. I know where I was when I was reading, say, the first Harry Potter that I was ever reading, or the funniest Wodehouse or something.
Yeah, that's also the other thing about how more than the quality of the song, the memory plays a thing, more the quality of anything. So I think Simblified itself is a good example of that, where a lot of listeners have actually told us that it's the vibe that we have and the camaraderie that we have that keeps them hooked over sometimes questionable content that might be titled during the show.
You know, just one last point that I wanted to say, but it's not necessarily connected to the topic itself, but one thing I find fascinating about the evolution of media is that it's almost like that media is getting pulled into extremes. Like, as we have more and more access to music, which is like on Spotify, for instance, you pay whatever $150 a month and you have access to all the music that ever exists pretty much. It almost seems irrational that vinyl sales are increasing 100% year on year, right? Which has so many disadvantages compared to Spotify. Like, you have to have a clunky machine, you can't skip, you have audio quality might be slightly lower at times, not compared to Spotify, of course, but digital music in general, whatever the case may be. And the same thing can be true of like one fact that absolutely blew my mind when I read it recently is because of the trend of book recommendations that are happening on TikTok, physical books in the US are increasing like 30-40% year on year. Because of the whole phenomenon of book talk. So it seems fascinating to me that there are two polarizing things almost, right? At a time when we have digital surfeit of things, that we want to go back to simpler times, or maybe one way of thinking about it is we are very impatient with respect to discovery, but once we find what we actually want, then we go super deep into it. We spend hundreds of hours watching favorite creators on Twitch, for example, playing video games. We will binge read an entire author whose blog we have just discovered, or we'll binge watch an entire series from the past that we just discovered has now come onto Netflix for the first time. And buying vinyls and disconnecting from the madness of the internet for 1 hour a day may be one way of doing that. So I find this in an era where we always say short attention spans, get to the point and all that. It's kind of interesting that long form articles are being written and shared more than ever before. So that aspect of media always fascinates me.
It wasn't that's precisely there with the stuff like Joe Rogan's podcast or like stuff where long form podcast, long form content.
Dan Carlin, I mean, Amit Verma himself is a great example of that, right?
And that's where I think it's come down to, once you have subscribed to the narrative form of the person that you're listening to, you're coming back for that, because you're no longer just saying, oh, whether I like this episode or not, I'm just jumping myself inside this particular narrative flow and I'll see where it goes. And so it's no longer restricted by time. It's no longer restricted by form. It's no longer restricted by anything. I'll just take it and
absolutely. And I think if we can tie it back to music this way, and this has more to do with artist management than it does with music in general. One of the criticisms that I've heard of modern music, apart from the music itself, that they are so made for transience and temporary success that nobody remembers the song a year later. Sure, it might be Billboard #1, it might have 100 million views at some time, but nobody remembers the artist after a point of time. Whereas you have some artists that keep for a long period of time. Again, not necessarily because of music, but because of the artist management. Like the job of an A&R executive in the 70s and 80s was to nurture a band, an artist, build an imagery, build an aura, which is why in the 2020s, you still have kids listening to Kiss, Queen, the Beatles are still more relevant than ever before. So maybe there is something over there. Interesting. All of this. I think we should call it a day now.
I think that's a good point to call it a day. So I think we had a great conversation about understanding how the form or the platforms that are available for have evolved content, and how content continues to proliferate itself according to the form and even breaking that form in some ways. So superb conversation. So Naren, you want to take us out?
So stay safe, stay informed and contented, and stay simplified.
Wow.
That was
you worked that in nicely. That itself is a medium if you think about it. If you manage to get I can imagine a sponsor sponsoring Naren's that one segment. Stay sponsor plug, stay simplified. All right, there we go. All right.
See you guys.
See you next week.
Bye.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Cock and Bull on Cyrus Says, Cyrus talks to Gauri Devi Dayal, host of This Round Is On Me, along with Abbas Momin and Antariksh. They congratulate Gauri on the fact that her restaurant The Table made it to the top 50 restaurants in Asia, and discuss the Oscars debacle over Will Smith slapping Chris Rock. On Paisa Vaisa, Anupam introduces us to Anubhav Jain, CEO and co-founder at Groupify. They unravel how the BNPL service is solving SME's cash flow. On the Filter Coffee podcast, Karthik talks to Pamela Kale Malhotra, co-founder and trustee of the Sai Sanctuary. Karthik asks her how a girl from New Jersey grew up with the dream of starting a wildlife sanctuary. On Tere Mere Raste, Keshwa takes us on a trip to the land of Buddhist monks and Danny Denzongpa, Gang Talk. And on the Life Manifesto, Zarina talks about developing 4 must-have qualities for a better life. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show, or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you might be listening to us on. And do check us out on YouTube. We're building a whole bunch of different channels. You can find them on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And we're also doing a small listener survey, which we would really appreciate your help with. It helps us kind of talk to advertisers. So you could go to ivmpodcast.com/survey. It'll just take a couple of minutes, and it would be really helpful to us. We do appreciate this. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, SBI Life Insurance and the India Water Portal. Thank you so much for making this possible.
You're the people pleaser, right? Oh, yes. Or then desperately seeking the one? Oh, wait, you're the one who doesn't think they're ever good enough. Oh. So much drama. And for what? Is it doing you any good? Listen to me. I'm Chetna, your favorite positive action coach. Yes, I'm the one who has been dropping all those truth bombs on every episode. Oh no. And it's time you learn to say no to drama. That's also what my podcast is called. And a new episode is out every Monday and Wednesday on the IVM Podcast app, website, as well as all major podcasting platforms.